You can be in a room full of people, family at the dinner table, colleagues at a party, friends on a group chat, and feel completely alone. Alone in the way that makes the noise around you feel like it is happening on the other side of thick glass. You smile, you respond, you go through the motions, and the whole time something underneath is asking, why does no one actually see me? This is not a sign of unusual sensitivity or a personality defect. Swami Dayananda puts it plainly, you can be lonely in the midst of million people. You can live in a house with 20 people and still be lonely. If loneliness were about lacking people, a room full of them would cure it. It does not. What the experience points to is something most people would rather not look at directly. The quality of one's own company. Put on telephone hold. You start humming, checking your phone, scanning the room. In a waiting room with nothing to do, your hand moves to your pocket almost before a thought forms. Swami Dayananda observes that people doodle on notepads. Need hold music? Fill every gap with motion. Because you are bored with yourself, suddenly you are with yourself and you cannot handle this boredom. The dread of one's own company and the dread of being unseen in a crowd are not two separate problems. They are the same problem viewed from two angles. When you flee into a crowd, you are fleeing something internal. When you feel invisible inside that crowd, you face that same internal something with nowhere left to go. If the room full of people does not cure the loneliness, the solution is not a larger room or better people. The most natural response to feeling lonely is to find more people. Call someone, go somewhere busy, fill the silence. And it works, for a while. The conversation absorbs you, the noise distracts you, and the feeling recedes. But it comes back. This is the first clue that something is wrong with the diagnosis. The person who feels isolated at home feels isolated at the party too. The one who dreads an empty house finds, when the house is full, that a different kind of emptiness remains. The crowd was never the variable that mattered. When you seek out company to escape loneliness, you are treating a symptom as though it were the disease. The symptom is the ache of being alone with your own mind. The cure you reach for, other people, a busy schedule, background noise, drowns out that ache for a time. The moment the distraction ends, the mind is quiet again, and the feeling returns exactly where you left it. Nothing has been resolved. You have only postponed the encounter. The entire pattern of modern life is organized around this postponement. Put on hold during a phone call. Most people are checking their phone with the other hand within seconds. Sit in a waiting room and watch. Almost no one simply sits. The hold music is not a courtesy, it is a necessity, because the silence of one's own company has become genuinely uncomfortable. The discomfort is precise, the state of being emotionally dependent on external factors for a sense of well-being. In samsara, happiness requires the right conditions, comfort requires the right people, and peace requires the absence of noise. The mind in this state is never self-sufficient. It is always waiting for the outside to arrange itself correctly. The chain runs like this. Dependence produces expectations. Expectations produce disappointment. And disappointment produces the isolation you were trying to avoid. You reach toward others hoping they will make you feel less alone. When they fail, because no external factor can fill an internal gap, the loneliness deepens. The solution has become part of the problem. The problem is not with the world. The problem is that you depend on it. More people, more socializing, more activity, these are the cycle, not an interruption of it. The question that matters is not how do I find better company, but why is my own company not enough? That question points inward. And what it finds there is the actual source of the ache. When you feel lonely in a room full of people, you are not suffering from a shortage of company. You are suffering from a verdict you have passed on yourself, that you are somehow hollow at the center, and you are waiting for the people around you to overturn that verdict. This is apoornata, incompleteness, not a poetic word for sadness, but a precise description of a specific belief that you, as you are missing something essential. Not materially, not socially, but in some fundamental way you cannot name. You experience yourself as less than whole. Because you feel incomplete inside, you arrive needing something from everyone present. You need them to see you clearly. to understand you accurately, to signal that you are acceptable, that you belong, that your presence registers. When you privately believe you are empty, you will publicly seek to be filled, and the filling you reach for is other people's understanding and approval. When your sense of adequacy depends on whether the person across the room truly sees you, every conversation becomes a test with consequences. In a room of 20 people, each absorbed in their own lives, each carrying their own quiet version of the same problem, how many of those tests can you pass? You leave the party more hollow than when you arrived, not because no one was there, but because none of them could provide what you came looking for. Swami Dayananda states it directly. The loneliness you feel is not because you have no people around. The sense of loneliness arises because you see yourself as empty inside. And from that perceived emptiness comes a want, an inadequacy that no social event can resolve. Apoornata expresses itself most acutely as the feeling that others do not understand you. The feeling presents as information about other people. They are not paying attention. They are too shallow. They are preoccupied with themselves. But what generates the feeling is internal. You feel misunderstood because you start from the premise that you are inadequate. And from that premise, no amount of understanding from another person will ever be sufficient. Even when someone genuinely sees you, apoornata finds a way to discount it. Maybe they don't really know you. Maybe they would feel differently if they did. The feeling is not a report on other people. It is a report on the quality of your relationship with yourself. The urgent question is not how to find people who understand you better. It is why the sense of incompleteness is there in the first place, and whether it is true. The loneliness you feel in a crowded room has a specific texture. It is not that people are absent. It is that you feel unwelcome among them. You feel unseen, misread, subtly excluded. The people are there, but the sense of being truly received is not. This particular ache is worth examining closely, and it has a name, khandatvam, literally division. Khandatvam names the psychological experience of feeling cut off or separated from others, even when physically in their midst. It names the sense of being unwelcome or unrecognized among people who are present. The movement begins internally. When you carry apoornata, the felt inadequacy needs an explanation. And the most available explanation is, they do not understand me. The inadequacy you feel about yourself gets projected outward as evidence that others have failed to recognize you. What began as an internal verdict becomes an external story. When you are in a room and feel that no one truly sees you, the evidence appears to confirm itself. The casual conversations, the surface-level exchanges, the laughter at something you don't find funny, all of it seems to prove, I am not part of this. But this reading of the room is upstream of the room itself. The feeling of not being understood by others is rooted, at its source, in a lack of self-understanding, in the gap between who you believe yourself to be and what you can accept about yourself. Swami Dayananda puts it directly. The loneliness you feel has everything to do with only you. That's seeking, the constant monitoring of whether others are accepting you, getting you, approving of you, is not a response to what the people around you are doing. It is a symptom of what is already happening within. The experience of khandatvam feels entirely external. It announces itself as perception. I can see plainly that they don't understand me. The internal state appears separate from the reading of the room. The internal state is generating the reading. A person who has deeply internalized self-rejection will find that rejection everywhere. A group of people joking together becomes evidence of exclusion. A friend who calls less frequently becomes evidence of abandonment. Someone misremembering a detail becomes evidence of indifference. The world is a surface onto which the internal verdict is endlessly projected. Because the projector is not noticed, every fresh piece of evidence feels like new information about the world, not old information about oneself. Swami Paramarthananda adds another layer. Khandatvam carries a specific fear, the fear of being left out entirely, not merely misunderstood but ejected, rejected not by one person, but by life itself. This fear is what makes the crowded room so excruciating. You are physically inside it, but you live with the constant anxiety that at any moment you could be expelled from it. The body is present, the sense of belonging is held on probation. The person surrounded by people is not experiencing the room. They are managing a story about the room, watching, interpreting, bracing. What breaks this cycle is not finding people who finally understand you. Even when someone does offer understanding, the relief is temporary. Apoornata does not allow it to land fully or stay long. The actual question is not, why don't these people understand me? But what is this sense of inadequacy that keeps demanding their understanding in the first place? Here is the distinction that changes everything. Loneliness happens to you, while aloneness is something you choose. When you feel lonely in a crowded room, the emotional weight is the feeling of being a small, unsupported person, someone who needs the room to supply what is missing inside. The phrase, "I am alone" in this context is not a neutral description. It is a statement of vulnerability. I am without support. I am insufficient on my own. The dependency chain is mechanical. You depend, you expect. The expectation is not met, and you suffer. More people in the room does not break this chain. It only gives it more links. The instinctive solution is to add more company, more noise, more stimulation. That impulse reveals something. You are trying to escape from yourself. Swami Dayananda puts it plainly. When you are put on hold and hold music plays, you do not object to it. You need it. Without it, you are suddenly alone with your own mind for 30 seconds. And that is uncomfortable. People doodle on notepads in meetings for the same reason. The aversion is not to silence or empty calendars. It is to the experience of your own company. The problem was never the absence of people. The answer is ekantata, deliberate aloneness, chosen seclusion, not physical isolation by circumstance, not withdrawal from bitterness, but consciously sitting with your own mind without providing it an escape route. Loneliness is passive and suffered. Ekantata is active. You face the mind directly, on purpose, and learn what is actually there. Many people try physical aloneness, staying home, avoiding gatherings, and find the loneliness intensifies. Physical isolation without inner work is not ekantata. It is loneliness in a quieter room. Ekantata is not about where your body is. It is about whether you are willing to stop running. A person who walks with a crutch when the leg is genuinely weak has no choice. Remove it and they fall. A person who has leaned on a crutch for years after the leg healed is not being supported. They are being held back. Emotional dependence on company works the same way. The question is whether you have learned to stand without leaning. Ekantata is the practice of standing, not against others, but without requiring them to hold you up. The practice is not dramatic. You sit with your own mind, thoughts arise, some uncomfortable, some familiar. The urge to check a phone, start a conversation, turn on background noise. All of it surfaces. None of it destroys you. The mind that seemed unlivable starts to become habitable. Not because the thoughts stop, but because you stop fleeing them. Solitude here is evidence. Evidence that you can be with yourself. The question that almost always arises at this point reveals how deep the dependency runs. But if I am truly alone, who will be there for me? It is the most honest thing the mind says in this entire conversation. It reveals exactly where the real problem sits. Who will care for me if I am alone? Is the voice of a mind that has not yet discovered any source of stability within itself, and so treats the prospect of independence not as freedom but as abandonment. The question assumes that care must come from outside, that without others positioned around you as emotional supports, you will collapse. That assumption is exactly the structure of parivesham, dependence on external factors as the source of well-being that produces loneliness in the first place. The pain appears to be caused by the absence of people, the empty house, the quiet room, the children who have grown and left. The pain is not caused by their absence. It is caused by having outsourced your sense of wholeness to them. The empty nest does not create the vacuum. It exposes the one that was always there, papered over by busyness and belonging. Becoming physically isolated would not solve anything. You would carry the identical problem, because the problem is not the presence of others. It is the need for their presence to feel complete. Physical solitude without inner preparation produces a louder version of the same ache. The goal is atmavasham, dependence on the self, the source of genuine contentment, not withdrawal from people, but a relationship with one's own mind that no longer requires an audience. In Atmavasham, you can be in a full room or an empty one, and neither condition is destabilizing. People become something you genuinely enjoy rather than something you quietly require. The practice of sitting with your own mind, facing what arises without suppressing it with company or noise, is not pleasant in the beginning. The mind will protest. It will generate the "who will care for me" question, and several cousins of it. This is the resistance of a mind that has been using external life as a crutch for so long that it has forgotten it has legs. The discomfort of that practice is not evidence that something is wrong. It is evidence that something real is finally being faced. Every moment of sitting with your own mind without fleeing is a moment of discovering that the mind, met honestly, does not destroy you. What cannot destroy you, met often enough, gradually loses its power to terrify you. The fear of independence dissolves not by arguing with it, but by outgrowing it, by finding, through repeated encounter with your own inner life, that there is something in you that is not diminished by solitude, not dependent on approval, and not made smaller by being seen or unseen. That discovery turns the question, "who will care for me?" from a cry of dread into something that no longer needs to be asked. The sense of inadequacy does not arise randomly. It arises because you have taken yourself to be a particular, limited thing, this body, this personality, this history of being understood or misunderstood. From that position, the math is clear. A small thing will always feel the absence of what it lacks. It will look outward for completion because completion, from inside a limited self, can only come from outside. But what if the identification itself is the error? Swami Dayananda states this precisely. Loneliness does not dissolve by finding the right person or the right crowd. It dissolves when you discover yourself as the whole. His exact words, "When you are the whole, the limitless, where is the question of your feeling incomplete and lonely?" A person who believes they are holding a half-empty cup will always be looking for something to fill it. The moment they see the cup is full, that seeing is not an addition, it is a correction. This is Advaita, non-duality, the state in which no second thing is required for completeness. It is a claim about the nature of awareness itself. The awareness in which loneliness appears is not itself lonely. The awareness in which the thought, "no one understands me" arises is not itself ununderstood. This is where apoornata collapses at its root. The incompleteness was never a feature of you. It was a feature of a mistaken identity, the identity of a separate, bounded individual who needed the world to fill in what was missing. When that identity is examined directly and found to be inaccurate, the need it generated also dissolves, not suppressed, not managed, no longer generated, because the premise that produced it is no longer accepted. The recognition can begin now, in the ordinary act of noticing. There is something in you that witnesses the loneliness without being lonely. What remains is to know it clearly rather than glimpse it occasionally. That shift in knowing, from the one who feels the ache of division to the awareness that holds the ache untouched, is the final step.